Hello, this is Zach Malash with the Group 6 final project for the data visualization course. We decided for our final presentation to create a credit complaint dashboard that investigated the credit complaints across the nation. Our objective was to create a dashboard analyzing current trends in credit complaints across the continental United States. This will allow consumers to identify what issues may be found near where they live to be aware of potential fraud. This will also allow credit companies to diagnose potential problem areas where they may need to add additional focus in order to both improve their company image as well as provide a quality service with greater profits through a larger, happier customer base. A successful dashboard which we will create will allow the user to visually analyze trends across multiple products as well as make those analyses at both a national and state level. The data sources that we used for this were the credit complaint data from consumerfinance.com, which has a database of the complaints lodged against major credit providers across the nation. Additionally, we used census population data both at the state level and at the zip code level. Note here that we also needed data for a zip code validator. There were two major issues that we encountered when creating this dashboard. First, there was a lot of complaint data where the state that the complaint was logged in did not match the zip code that it was logged in also. For example, a zip code in California in some instances was showing as being in the state of Alaska. As a result, we used census data to match zip codes to states and only allowed data where the zip code and the state matched. Additionally, zip codes with small populations showed as having major problems with regards to credit complaints. We solved this by allowing in the map for the user to select between looking at total reports and reports per 100,000 residents. This allows for low population based zip codes that are showing as having many times greater reports as being filtered out by only having 2 or 3 total, which pale in comparison to the rest of the state. Some interesting findings that we will look at during our demo are a national trend in student loan complaints, debt collection in North Carolina being an example of a location where a zip code has few residents, and as a result, the data could be shown as being off if the map breakdown is not user configurable. Mortgages in Maryland show a trend toward the DC metro area not being very favorable toward consumers. And Commerce Township, Michigan is a major red flag for issuing mortgages. Jumping now to the Tableau, we can see here the Tableau as published on publictableau.com. Looking at mortgage, we can see that mortgage is by far the greatest percent of complaints across all the states. But we're going to go ahead and start out by looking at the New England, or a trend toward New England when it comes to student loans. So by selecting the student loan product and deselecting mortgage as a highlight, we can see that going from west to east, it seems that the green is getting darker on the east coast of the country. We can read, and especially the northeast part of the country. We can read this as there are more complaints in the New England, northeastern United States area, and this is a potential issue where it might be because there is more student loan based on the population demographics, or it's possible that the people living in that area are brought down by more debt. Jumping back to mortgages, we can see this statewide this national breakdown. Most of the complaints are based on mortgage subproducts that are not very well identified. For those that are identified, fixed mortgages and adjustable rate mortgages are the two major players, with fixed mortgage complaints lodging almost 3 times as many complaints as the next best adjustable rate mortgage. Additionally, we can see what type of issues are being handled. Over 50% the issue was loan modification, collection, or foreclosure. People aren't happy that banks are changing their loans and taking their houses away. Well, we can see that the companies were very quick or have had very timely responses, with most responses being closed, but over 75% being closed only with an explanation and without any sort of relief being offered to the person making the complaint. Notice that the untimely response is only a sliver for mortgage. However, if we look at payday loans, a notorious segment where for people to try and take out money from others, there's a much higher percentage. 5.33% of complaints are based on untimely responses. And this goes hand in hand with what we would expect given the notoriety of the payday loan industry. Jumping back to mortgages, we can look and see that Maryland is one of the darkest green colors available. So we're going to go ahead and jump in to Maryland and see their breakdown. We can see here that the fixed mortgage rate is much closer to the other mortgage rate than we saw across the country, but it still corresponds very much with the breakdown that we saw nationally. Additionally, this percent of issue type and percent of company response type has been updated with the Maryland values, and we see that most of those values are still very, very close to the national trend that we just witnessed. Jumping down to the map breakdown, we can see right around the District of Columbia that the colors are much darker than in the other areas of Maryland. This gives us the visualization that in the greater DC metro area, there are a lot more mortgage complaints than in the rest of the state of Maryland. And we can validate this by jumping to the total and seeing that, in fact, even in total, in the greater DC area, we have the greatest number of complaints in Maryland, and it's all in that general area. So as a consumer, we can make the assumption that this is not a good area to get a mortgage. And from the point of view of the suppliers, the creditors, we know that people are more likely to default in these areas. Jumping to North Carolina, and debt collection, we have an example of where we can see all the metropolitan populations as having the darker areas. There are more people in these areas. As a result, this should be expected. However, if we jump from total to per 100,000 residents, we can see that this county out to the west is showing as 546 complaints per 100,000 residents. Jumping to a random county near the middle, we can see 7.9 values of 7.9, 21.3, 15.3, with the darkest one being 154.8. Taking this western zip code, we can see that, in fact, there were only 2 complaints lodged in this zip code. This goes to show that because the population is so much smaller, an analysis looking at only the per 100,000 residents would show as being a major issue, even though this is probably a one-off situation. Looking at this as potential fraud, we can go ahead and jump to Michigan's mortgage to find a zip code where there's definitely something that needs to be investigated. We all know that Detroit is not doing very well economically currently, so let's dive into that area. And here we can see this one area. This is Commerce Township. Commerce Township currently is showing 4,042 issues per 100,000 residents. The initial analysis would make you think that this is caused by the same thing that we just saw in North Carolina. However, jumping to the total, and again jumping down to the Detroit area, we can see that, in fact, Commerce Township has 887 mortgage complaints. This is a major red flag for potential fraud or for potential creditors taking advantage of the residents there. As a result, this is a trend that we should be looking into that we were able to find via this visualization. This has been Zach Malash for Group 6. Thank you for watching.